Hello and welcome to some unexpectedly early previews for the Cornucopia and Guilds second edition cards. So, in a development that I don't think we've seen before, because while there have been leaks before, but today Rio Grande Games, the publisher of Dominion, published the new second edition rule book for the Cornucopia and Guilds combined expansion. If you didn't know, first of all, if you didn't know there's going to be a second edition of Cornucopia and Guilds combined into a single expansion, and the rule book got published today. The expectation was that the previews would be published sometime in early March. So this is coming a couple of weeks early, but because it's official, it's not. I mean, I put leak in the title because it's a leak in this sense that I think it was a mistake, but it's official, so it's not a leak in the sense that it's not like somebody got a hold of the information and then put it up when they weren't supposed to. Well, I mean, somebody external. Point being that because it is an official publishing of the rule book, Donald X has decided that the previews, if he's going to do them, will go up sooner, and that the cards will be released on the digital platforms, both Dominion.Games and Templegate Games, earlier than they would have otherwise. So I didn't really see much point in waiting to look at these, although the way I'm having to do this is a little bit janky compared to when Donald X publishes the previews, which is a little unfortunate, but it's fine. We're going to get to find out about some new cards, and that's going to be exciting. So I have the rulebook up here. I have it very zoomed in because the only way that you can actually see the cards themselves is when they just go through individual cards to add rules clarifications, and those card images are pretty small. So this is going to look a little weird. Also, the art is very low res. The text is all like vectored, I think. So it like zooms nicely, but the images do not. Anyway, I'm going to go through all of these. So we're going to find out which cards are still in and which cards have been added. And then at the end, we can circle back and figure out which cards have been removed. Without further ado, let's get to scrolling. So first we've got Advisor, and Baker snuck in there. Okay, so this is a surprise to me. I did not expect Advisor to stay. Lots of people complain about how long Advisor takes to resolve. I don't mind Advisor myself, but I do understand the complaints. So I was expecting it to be cut, but instead, it is still here. Baker being still here, not surprising to me at all. I had no expectation that would get removed. Next up, we have Butcher. Also not a surprise. I would have been shocked if Butcher had been removed. Butcher's a really cool card. Candlestick Maker. Okay, hold on. Candlestick Maker, very straightforward card. Not particularly powerful, but I wouldn't have thought that it needed removing either, although given the number of cards that needed to be removed, it wouldn't have shocked me if it had gone, but it is still here. Okay, now we've got a new card, Carnival. So this is a 5-cost action. Reveal the top 4 cards of your deck, put one of each differently named card into your hand, and discard the rest. Okay, this is actually pretty funny because we were just talking on the Discord pretty recently about having this exact replacement for Harvest. And I think we can safely assume that Harvest is going to go, although we haven't confirmed that yet. But the thing is, I think it's still bad. It's better than Harvest, surely. But if you have... if you compare this to another 5-cost Smithy, which I think is the most natural comparison, it compares pretty unfavorably, I think. In fact, I think it compares favorably to just regular Smithy. Even without considering the fact that it costs 5. Because, yes, it does have the theoretical upside that you reveal 4 different named cards, and you can draw them all, and that is nice. But I think the odds in the general case that you reveal two differently named cards and you only draw two are higher than that, significantly higher than that. Probably in a typical deck, once you have some stuff in it, it's the most likely case is that you get to draw three, I would think. If Harvest was more commonly played, I guess we'd have a better idea of what the distribution is there. But yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be moat draw often enough for it to be annoying, and then even when it isn't, it's usually going to be smithy draw, which for 5 is not very exciting, especially because it's unreliable. Every once in a while, it's going to draw you one card and you're going to be really sad. That is going to be rare, though. So, I mean, I don't think that in and of itself is a particularly big problem. But it's just really going to be rare that you actually draw 4 cards at this. And it is obviously terminal. So, you know, it's as a 5 cost, it's a pretty hefty investment for what it gives you. If we compare this to cards, you know, even like Journeyman, which is not a power card, I think it's going to be like significantly weaker. Maybe still good enough relative to a card like Journeyman that you essentially add it to the same decks, where, you know, you just have to deal with, like, you know, you're more likely to dud or whatever, but essentially if you would build with Journeyman, or you would build with Catacombs, or you would build with, you know, Patrol or whatever, then you'll build with Carnival. I think that's a reasonable assumption. But we'll need to see, you know, exactly how it plays out in terms of that distribution, because I do think that, you know, there are cases where you would build with cards like Journeyman or Patrol or what have you, but you wouldn't build with Moat because you just aren't drawing enough. And if the distribution of this is close enough to Moat draw, then you might run into problems. I mean, I think realistically that's not going to happen that much, but I could be wrong about that. In any case, definitely not like a particularly strong card. Okay. Next up, we have Fairgrounds. Fairgrounds staying does not surprise me either. I mean, the game definitely doesn't need to be removing more alt VP cards, and Fairgrounds is a pretty good one. So, and it's cool. And it's thematic. All right, next up, we've got another new card, and this is Farmhands. +1 card, +2 actions, 4 cost. When you gain this, you may set aside an action or treasure from your hand and play it at the start of your next turn. Well, this sure looks like a replacement for Farming Village, though technically Farming Village could be the next card. We'll see. If it is, I mean, it's almost certainly better than Farming Village, because the Farming Village effect is, well, I guess it doesn't matter whether it's replacing it or not in terms of this, but the Farming Village effect, in addition to the, you know, plus, well, it's technically, it doesn't have +1 card, but, you know, it was always pretty weak. I mean, not useless, but pretty weak. This, on the one hand, is less generally applicable, maybe, you know, but like there are going to be times when you just don't have anything to set aside. But when you do, I mean, it's kind of like Gondola, you know, where like there's, you can, I mean, granted, Gondola's play it now, this is play it next turn, but it's the sort of thing where you can kind of build around it. You can potentially stuff more terminals into your deck than you would otherwise, and it's no Villa, but you can use that to like resolve some terminal collision, particularly early, right? If you collide terminals on turn 3 and you can afford Farmhands, then you can play your other terminal on turn 4, and like it's not like you were otherwise going to be able to play both of them in the same turn anyway, and it's not going to miss the shuffle, so like that's all fine. You can use it to float some money from turn to turn. Like, even if you set aside just like a copper, like, hey, not only is that a coin, that you get to bank, but it's also potentially going to miss a shuffle, and that's a good thing. So and speaking of which, more generally, making certain cards miss your shuffle with this could be pretty nice. So there are definitely like going to be times when it's hard to take advantage of this, but you need a village, so you're just getting a 4-cost vanillage. But I do think this ability is pretty good. I think, like I said, if you plan around it, I think you can get a lot of value from it. I think it will, like, there are particularly cases where you get in this awkward spot early in a game where you want multiple terminals and then you also want a village. But if you get the extra terminal first, then you might have terminal collision, you can't play them, and then that's sad. And if you get the village first, it doesn't do anything because you don't have the other terminal to play. This card sort of solves that problem, potentially. I mean, you still have to be able to hit 4 to afford to buy it. That's like the caveat, but that could be a pretty nice smoother that way. And like I said, like just making cards miss the shuffle and stuff like that could also be really nice. So yeah, I think this is good. It's not. I don't think it's like I don't know, Wandering Minstrel level good, but I think it's significantly better than Farming Village, or like some of the other like close to vanilla 4-cost villages like Walled Village or whatever. Yeah, good card. Alrighty. Okay, so first of all, we can now confirm that Farming Village has been cut. Maybe there's other cards that we could have confirmed at this point as well, but I'm not going to try to keep like that close to track. But in any case, we've also got this new card, Farrier. +1 card, +1 action, +1 buy, overpay, +1 card at the end of this turn per 1 coin overpaid, and this is a 2-cost. Okay, so this is basically, it's like a market square without the reaction, and then you get this overpay effect, where you can draw extra cards for your next hand for each coin that you pay for this. That's pretty interesting. I'm trying to think like what that does in the opening. Like, so for example, if you have a 4/3 and you open with like your, I don't know, your priest or your bounty hunter or something like that, and then you open with this and you overpay by 1, then you're guaranteed to see your priest or your bounty hunter on 1 of turn 3 or 4, because you'll have 11 cards in your deck. You'll have 12 cards in your deck, including this. And this will draw, this will cycle. So you have 11 stop cards, and then you're going to see 6 stop cards on turn 4, and then 5 stop cards on turn 5. So that's pretty cool. You could also make use of that with like Peasant. With Page, it's a little bit more awkward because you potentially trigger a shuffle or don't get to play this card. But I mean, maybe that's fine. You're only missing out on a buy anyway. A cantrip buy in general for this cheap is going to definitely be something that pushes piles very aggressively. Like it's very cheap, and you can just buy a whole bunch of them, and then you can have a whole bunch of buys, and then you can pile something else. So that's something to be alert for. But yeah, I think like this is similarly to Farmhands, but in a different way. This is a way to like basically like smooth stuff out where it's like I have a little bit more money than I really need. I want to hit 5. I hit 3 or I hit 4. Well, I didn't hit 5 this turn, but if I buy one of these and float, like some of those coins into cards, then I sure am likely to hit it next turn. So that's the other thing, is you don't have to do it, turn 2. You could do it turn 3. You could just get your 2 normal opening buys. You hit 4 on turn 3, and then you overpay for this by 2, and then you draw 7 cards, and you guarantee that you see your opening buys, or maybe you already saw one of them, but whatever. You get to guarantee you see your whole deck, or the rest of your deck on turn 4. So I think that's pretty cool. Yeah. So it seems like a pretty strong overpay effect. Obviously, in the presence of hand size attacks, then that effect is going to be diminished. Even then, the early game stuff will still be basically as good, because like even if you buy this and your opponent plays a militia, like you're as well off as you would have otherwise been in terms of like the cycling and like getting to see cards, and you would have gotten militia attacked anyway. So from a hand size standpoint, whatever. As the game goes on, then when the precise position that you are in your deck maybe becomes less important if you have more draw or whatever, then maybe like the value will go to basically 0 in the presence of hand size attacks. But early in the game, it'll still be good. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's not always going to be what you want to do, depending on what else is on the board. But I think this could see a lot of play over the first, let's say, like 6 to 8 turns, 6 to 9 turns, something like that. For specifically because of the overpay, and then like ultimately, obviously, just having this cheap source of plus buy of non-terminal, non-stop card plus buy will also be nice, and will, like I said, probably push piles and that. So that's I guess the thing that I would worry about with this card is that it'll be like a little too pile outy, but I guess it at least isn't actually generating any econ. So all right, next up we have Ferryman. So 5 cost, plus 2 cards, plus 1 action, discard a card. Okay, so that's just just fugitive. That's what he's called. Setup: choose an unused kingdom card pile, costing 3 or 4. Gain 1 when you gain a ferryman. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, I mean, this is definitely not like a power 5, by itself. The power of this card is going to come when it's combined with a 3 or a 4 that you want anyway, and then you're getting value out of this. Like, this is a weaker version of Forum, essentially. Like, I mean, it is fugitive, but like if you're thinking of it in terms of 5 costs, it's a weaker version of Forum, and Forum is on the weak side for a 5 for what it does. The main advantage of it is that you can pick it up when you don't have enough buys to like make good use of your econ. I mean, sometimes you just want a Forum for 5, but a lot of times it's like, well, I have 10 coins and 1 buy, so I'll get a Forum and something else. So this is kind of like that, but instead of it being, it's more that it's like condensed, right? So like, I mean, even if it can't actually choose like silver, but supposing that it did, just for the sake of illustration, and you had 5 coins, and what you really wanted was just to add some econ to your deck, you'd be like, okay, well, I'll buy a ferryman and a silver rather than just a silver, and now, I get a little extra value out of that. Obviously, you're hoping that it does something better than just give you a silver, and sometimes it will, and sometimes it won't. Although, we haven't quite gotten to the point where we can confirm that fortune teller is removed, but I'm suspecting that particular possibility will not continue to be there. But it might give you a Sage, and at that point you're just like, oh no. But yeah, I think so it's pretty hard to evaluate in a vacuum because there's so many different possibilities for what this could be combined with. And sometimes it's going to be like, oh, it's combined with, like, I don't know, Moneylender. Well, I opened Moneylender. Okay. But sometimes it's going to be combined with, I don't know, like something like Menagerie or Wishing Well or something, where it's like, not, in both of those cases, there's not only are you getting like multiple sources of draw in a sense. I mean, this is more sifting than draw, but also there's like some potential synergy. Like Ferryman can potentially set up a Menagerie draw, or like if you discard a card, what's in your discard, you play your Wishing Well and you name the card. So like there's there could be some combinations that are significantly better than that I just haven't thought of. Like they're so yeah, pretty wide range of possibilities for this. It seems unlikely that it's going to be something you would want as your first 5 unless you have a 5/2 and it's the kind of board where you would have rather opened with one of the like the 4s or the 3s anyway. It's like, oh, I got a 5/2 and there's like Sentinel or Steward or Masquerade or whatever. Like, yeah, okay, I'll take this. But yeah, I mean, if so I guess in the general case, I would usually like this effect is, I guess I would usually expect that this effect is not really strong enough that it's going to push you to buy it like over a good 5 cost if you wouldn't have otherwise preferred the other card that it's giving you over that 5 cost anyway. Maybe sometimes, but usually not. But it is like a dense package. If nothing else, that's good for like trash for benefit, right? You buy this and then you can trash for benefit either this or the other card, and you're like, it's net gains and all that. But also just, if you want the other card, like then that's good value. So yeah, like I said, really hard to evaluate the overall strength of it though. Okay, next up we have Footpad, which is a 5 cost attack. And +2 coffers. Each other player discards down to 3 cards in hand. In games using this, when you gain a card in an action phase, +1 card. What? Oh my god. That's... wow. Okay, so I want to point out that the below the line text is not contingent on you gaining a Footpad. It just says in games using this. So like, oh my gosh, like Groom. Oh my gosh. Or like, I mean, I don't know how. Oh wait, yeah. Hostelry. Oh my god. You like, even just with regular workshop, you workshop a hostelry. You discard. Let's say you have like a workshop and 3 coppers and an estate. You workshop a hostelry. You discard 3 coppers. You draw 4 cards, and you can probably buy something else, and you still get your 4 horse or your 3 horses in your hostelry. What? Oh my god, that is bonkers. Okay, so other than that, when you play this card, gain this card and actually play it, it's kind of like Villain. I would say in general it's stronger. Villain has the conditional like discard where it has to be a card that costs at least 2, which means that once you've trashed your estates, it does, like, you can't just discard like a you can't discard a copper or a curse, like, period. And then, like, once you trash your estates, you're likely gonna have to discard something you would rather keep in your hand. Although if you're thin enough, then that would be generally true anyway. But I would say, like, while Archer has an argument for being a stronger attack than Militia, just in terms of the attack, not in terms of, like, whatever else. To me, this is, like, almost, maybe almost always is too strong, but, like, very often going to be a stronger attack than Villain. And the other, the on-play effect is the same as Villain. So I would say that this card is just going to be stronger than Villain. It also gets a boost in power if, for whatever reason, your opponent is gaining action cards in your action phase, which usually is not the case, but there are situations where that happens, like Falconer, or something. That's going to be rare, but if it does happen, then this card gets stronger because, hey, you can counteract the below the line text with the above the line text. But yeah, the below the line text is wild, and it doesn't necessarily affect the strength of the card itself that in that obvious of a way. Although I guess, again, like, probably hand size attacking becomes more important in a context where, like, you can more explosively, like, go off than, like, well, I guess I better attack my opponent to reduce the chances that their starting hand is any good and they can actually, go off with it. But yeah, crazy boost to, like, workshop variants in the broadest sense of the term. So, like, including stuff that gains 5s, like University. Like, man, University is so good with this card. Holy crap. Or, like, Artisan. Artisan needs a little bit more support. Like, University is just bonkers with this. Like, jeez. Artisan needs a little bit more support, but, like, the fact that it becomes hand size neutral, I don't know if I don't remember if Artisan is worded as gain a card. Artisan gains the card to your hand and then you put the card on your deck. So you will gain the card and then you'll draw a card and then you'll put a card on your deck, which is probably better than usually better than the other way around. If not, like, at worst it's the same, but oftentimes it's better, because you get, like, to see an extra card. And I guess it could be worse in the context where it's like the last card you want to play and you didn't want to top deck anything, but that's pretty rare anyway. So yeah, what was the other? Oh, remodels, right? I think it would be a little bit of a stretch to call remodels workshop variants, but, like, again, you, like, draw a card when you play your remodel. This is really good with replace if you have any kind of village effect, like you replace and you would normally top deck the card, but now, okay, again, I'm not sure about the wording of replace. Do you top deck it? Is it trash a card or gain a card putting it onto your deck, or is it gain a card and then put it onto your deck, or whatever? I don't know, whatever. Armory, similar thing going on there. I'm pretty sure Armory doesn't get around Siren, which means that Armory puts the card directly onto your deck, which means that you would draw the card that you put onto your deck. Does Replace get around Siren? I don't remember. I'd have to read the card text. But whatever. Even if it doesn't, even if the card ends up top decked, it's still good. This is just this is so wild. Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. Moving on. Maybe. Here we go. Hamlet. Okay, Hamlet confirmed. Fortune teller. I can words sometimes. Fortune teller confirmed removed. No surprise there. Hamlet confirmed in. Also no surprise there. Why would you cut Hamlet? There's no reason to do that. Herald confirmed. Not surprising to me either. And on to the next page. Horn of Plenty confirmed. Also not surprising. Hunting Party confirmed. Also not surprising. Infirmary. That's a new one. Oh, you know what's gone? Doctor. That's not too surprising either. People whine a lot about Doctor. I definitely feel the complaints with Doctor, but at the same time, I did think that the effect was cool, even if it was also annoying. Mostly the on-gain, right? The on-play effect of Doctor is like, the on-gain effect, I think, was very neat. But let's see about Infirmary. So 3 cost with an overpay, +1 card. You may trash a card from your hand, overpay, play this once per coin overpaid. Okay, so this is basically the Doctor effect, except it's not doing the deck inspection. Well, I mean, it kind of is, because it's drawing cards, but it's like you can still trash from your hands. The junk you already have in hand is like still eligible to be trashed. So this definitely seems like it's trying to be fixed Doctor, which fair enough. And I mean, it seems like it succeeds. So obviously Infirmary like isn't going to have the highs that Doctor does on play, because it's only going to trash 1 card. But it's like guaranteed to be able to like trash a junk if you see a junk, unlike Doctor, which, well, yeah, which you could fail to name the correct junk to trash. And then the overpay, like, I'm trying to think if there's any scenarios where this overpay doesn't accomplish basically the same thing that Doctor does. It can't trash itself. That's a difference. Maybe it can, actually. Because the whole reason with the errata to overpay that Doctor could trash itself is because it went into the discard pile before the overpay effect activated. So I guess it can trash itself. Okay. So that's not a difference. And it doesn't have the problem that Doctor had where you would like see the same card multiple times. Or could see the same card multiple times. Yeah, it really feels like fixed Doctor. It feels like this is just fixed Doctor. So given that, I mean, I can't really. Yeah, I just said that. Oh, I thought Doctor was cool, but I mean, this is just fixed Doctor. I see no problems here. Seems like a good replacement. It's going to be more consistent. It's going to be like, so not, I mean, I mentioned, okay, the on play is more consistent, but also the overpay is more consistent, because like, okay, let's say that, I mean, granted, it still matters in terms of like shuffle trigger timing stuff, but if you if you overpay for this and you don't see your estates, like there's a good chance that's because they're in your hand, and so you can trash them from your hand. If they're not, if you're just like, oh, it was neither of them, then like, well, you're gonna start drawing your estates, and where Doctor would run into problems because it couldn't trash the estates out of your hand, this is going to be able to do that. It's going to be a little bit slow at doing that potentially, but it's going to be able to do it. So yeah, this is a really nice replacement. I like it a lot. I think it'll fill a similar role to Doctor, but it'll do it in a way that's less frustrating and less swingy, and 2 thumbs up from me on this one. Next, we've got Jester. Jester stays. That I could have seen Jester being removed, but you know, it's I didn't particularly think it needed to be. Journeyman. You know, I didn't even consider the fact when I was going on and on about Journeyman earlier that it could have actually been removed too, but it isn't. And I mean, again, that's not a card that I thought needed to be removed. Joust. Okay. Oh, okay. I know where we are. We're at the tournament replacement, aren't we? Yeah, I think that's very, very, very likely. Okay, 5 cost. +1 card, +1 action, +1 coin. So 5 cost peddler that is not conditional on a tournament. I mean, we don't know for sure the tournament is gone, but you may set aside a province from your hand to gain any reward to your hand. Discard the province in cleanup. Okay, so first of all, this is trying to prevent you from gaining multiple prizes, well, rewards, excuse me, with the same province within a single turn. Makes sense. There's no blocking anymore, so that's just gone. That also makes sense. I mean, thematically, I think it did, like, I understand why tournament worked the way that it did thematically. It's like I mean, not that a province necessarily makes sense for this, but it's like you're literally like blocking the other person from, like, you know, knocking you down or whatever. But you know, that was definitely one of the more like frustrating aspects of it. It's funny, I remember seeing Akuchi say, like, maybe as recently as earlier today, that like tournament is one of the few 4 costs that would be good if it cost 5 instead. Granted, we don't know what the rewards look like, so maybe this card is significantly worse than tournament for that reason. But I mean, I agree with the general sentiment. You can't open with this most of the time, so that definitely makes it worse than tournament. But you know, I mean, we'll have to look at the rewards like that. There's really no way around that. But yeah, I mean, I guess the other thing that surprises me a little bit, somebody posted in Discord something that I thought was very clever, and I'm a little surprised not to see that as the solution. So this is, and incidentally, this is like, you know, with tournament, right? You gained the province onto your deck, and then you drew it. If your tournament wasn't blocked, here you're just gaining it to your hand. So that's, you know, that's kind of taken care of. Or sorry, reward, whatever. Somebody suggested that it should work like Necromancer, where you can, like, when you play the tournament, or in this case the joust, you discard, or in this case I guess set aside the province, and then you can pick a prize or reward to play, and then it gets flipped over and you can't do it again during your turn. I thought that was actually really clever, and that's a way that you could allow all of the players to play with all of the rewards, and it would also keep the like pairing of province and tournament or joust relevant throughout the game, rather than just when you want to gain the reward. But yeah, we're not doing that. We're also not gaining duchies, which is interesting. One of the things about tournament gaining duchies is that because followers was in the game, right, you were already lowering estates and curses. So if you gain duchies, that's potentially like a third pile, and it doesn't require you to have a whole lot of econ, which can be relevant on a board where your deck is stuffed with one of curses or estates. I mean, we'll have to see what the rewards are, but it's interesting that you can't gain the duchy anymore. It makes me wonder about the reward changes, but I guess we'll have to wait and see when we get there. Okay. On to the next page, and Menagerie stays. I don't think that's a surprise. You know, people have argued that this card is overtuned. I think it's actually like I think it's hard enough to activate, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't necessarily like feel that hard to activate sometimes, but you do have to plan around it. And so I think it's, it's like people are used to doing it, but if you were to come at this fresh, like, and just like throw it in your deck without really thinking about it, you would find that, yeah, it's not like, gonna activate all that often if I'm not like planning around it. But if you are planning around it, then you're putting effort into it, and it's putting certain restrictions on your deck. So I'm fine with it balance wise, and I certainly wasn't expecting it to get removed. Merchant Guild, yeah, it would have been sad to see this card go. I wasn't expecting it to. It's not. Plaza, yeah, I would have been very surprised to see Plaza go. And it stays. Remake, another card that I would have been surprised to see removed, and is not. Shop, okay, that's a new one. Okay, well, I failed, but we're Soothsayer sticking around as well, and again, I guess Soothsayer is one of the ones that I could have seen being removed, just because, again, like, there's enough cards that need to be removed that some reasonable cards we're going to have to go, but that's yet another card where it's like, I don't see any reason this card needs to be removed. Anyway, Shop, 3 cost, +1 card, +1 coin. You may play an action card from your hand that you don't have a copy of in play. Okay, so this is just, like, a modified Conclave, essentially. The differences are, okay, it gives you one, it doesn't give you the extra coin the Conclave does. It draws you a card which Conclave does not, and it doesn't give you an action for playing the thing. So it's not a village, it's just a like restricted peddler. So maybe the Conclave comparison isn't that helpful, but it's because it has the same, it has the same text until the part where Conclave says if you do, +1 action. Or +2 actions? Yeah, +2 actions, right? Something like that. Maybe it's +1 action. No, it's +1 action, right? Because one of the actions gets used essentially to play the other card. Yeah, okay, whatever. Anyway, the point is, yeah, this is what this really is a restricted peddler, as opposed to Conclave being a restricted village, but it's restricted in the same way. And so it's a card that you're going to, like, not want a ton of because you're not going to be able to continually activate the condition. And spending your terminal space on peddlers is not good. So, like, if you're playing these terminally, that's not where you want to be. But having a few of these in your deck should be fine. And people complain about Conclave, but honestly, like, having a couple Conclaves in your deck is generally fine. And this card doesn't have the biggest problem that Conclave does, which is being a stop card. I mean, there is still, of course, the possibility that, like, you play this card and then all you have are terminals, and then, oh no, I can't play all of my terminals, I can't play multiple terminals because this isn't a village. But, like, just don't get this card to solve that problem. Like, it's not a village, it's just a peddler. But, like, it isn't like, in that context, it's not like it's reducing your terminal space, it's just not increasing it. In the opening, I think this is pretty good. Like, you combine it with a 4 cost, and it doesn't matter whether it's terminal or not. Like, this will be able to play it if they collide, and if not, whatever. The only, like, usually, like, what peddlers can you usually open with? You can open with Poacher, but that costs 4. You can open with Oasis, but you have to discard a card. You can open with Tournament, that also costs 4. Fisherman, if you're lucky, you open that on a 3/4 and you get that for 2. But if you know, unlucky, then you have to buy it on 4. This you can just get on your 3-coin hand, and it's unconditionally a peddler in the opening. And so yeah, that's for 3. That's quite nice, because you can pair it with a potentially with a stronger second opening buy. So I think this card will see significant gains in the opening. It's not always what you're going to want, but I mean, I would probably usually rather have this than silver anyway. So yeah, seems like it's not a card you're going to want to spam most of the time unless you have just crazy amounts of terminal space, but it seems like a pretty good card to me. It's going to be a card you're going to want to pick up, 1 copy early, generally, and probably over the course of the game, at least like a couple copies. So yeah, good. Right. Next page. And Stonemason stays. Yeah, I would have been pretty surprised if Stonemason got removed. Stonemason is one of the coolest cards in Dominion overall. It's just like so crazy. I mean, it is a little unfortunate how much it pushes 3-pile endings. But it does so many, like, it's just such a cool card. I don't know. Like, yeah, of course you gotta have Stonemason. Young Witch. Young Witch is one of the cards I definitely could have seen being cut and would have been fine with being cut, because I think it's on the weak side, like significantly on the weak side. I don't know. I feel like it's ignorable a lot. I usually don't bother with it, and but it's still here. Huge turnip. Okay. Get to that, I suppose. Oh, we got rewards. Okay, that makes sense. After Young Witch, we get to the rewards. Okay, so we got Coronet. This is basically like, just without having read the text, is like, this is looking like a crown kind of thing. You may play a non-reward action from your hand twice. You may play a non-reward treasure from your hand twice. So they still cost 0, which is interesting. I guess I don't, compared to like loot costing 7 or what have you, it always felt a little bit to me like prizes and like mercenary and madman costing 0 were an artifact of like an earlier design philosophy that Donald X had since like changed his mind about. Like, if you compare that to horse and loot and stuff like that. So I'm a little surprised that this didn't change. But I mean, I don't think it's a big deal. Just a little surprised. In any case, so yeah, this is like a super crown where you just get to do both of the crown effects. That's pretty good. The fact that it double plays a treasure, like at the time that it double plays an action, could definitely be awkward, depending on what you want to do with it. So like, granted, you could wait until your buy phase, and you could use this to double play an action and a treasure at that point and not have to spend any terminal space on either this or the action that you're double playing, which could be really powerful if you can afford to spend this on payload. But a lot of times you need your throne effects on deck control. If you are spending this on deck control, then you can only play this on whatever treasures you happen to have drawn by that point in your turn, rather than being able to save it for the best possible target. That being said, obviously, like, compared to Throne Room or Crown or, whatever other thrown effects, at least you get to do it at all, right? Even if you're just throwing a copper, like, hey, that's better than nothing. You know, so yeah, I mean, you can't really complain too much about that. It just might feel awkward, I guess, is maybe the way to put it. And then also it's 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 just something you have to keep in mind when you're evaluating, like, how good is this really, is like, well, just because you have, I don't know, a capital in your deck, if you don't have sufficient deck control, you're not necessarily going to get to Coronet that capital. So just, be aware of that. But also be aware of the upside where, it's like, oh, I drew my deck without using the Coronet, and now I can double play not only my capital, but also like my, livery or whatever. So yeah. Anyway, seems like a good reward. Although it is the sort of thing that isn't going to do that much in your deck super early, like if you're not colliding it with good stuff. So it's not the sort of thing that would push you as much to like rush to get it, like just like crazy to the level that like a card like Followers would. I mean, it's still, because there's only one of them, it's still the case that if you need this for your build, or you really, really want it for your build, you might have to rush it anyway, just because, like, well, it's either now or potentially never. But that is something to note. Okay, I guess we're gonna look at 2 of these at once, or 3 of these at once, or 4 of these at once. All right, you know what? No. Courser. We now, in addition to having like Courier and Courtier, we now have Courser and Corsair. So we got a Trusty Steed replacement, I guess. Choose 2 different options, +2 cards, +2 actions, +2 coins, gain 4 silvers. What? Wait, that like just is Trusty Steed? Okay, this is unexpected. Why not just leave Trusty Steed in? Is it just because it would be too confusing that doesn't have like the prize, or that has a prize type rather than the reward? I mean, like, leave it in but change the type on it, like whatever. Okay. I mean, there was nothing wrong with Trusty Steed, so I don't think it's ridiculous to replace Trusty Steed with Trusty Steed, like, but with a different name. This is like a different thing than we've seen with any of these 2Es, although granted, prizes, rewards are also themselves like in a kind of unique spot compared to other 2E stuff. But okay, we don't probably need to talk about that anymore. DeMent's, is that how you pronounce that? I think it's DeMent's. Even though the S and the N are in the opposite positions, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever heard somebody say that word out loud. Anyway, +2 actions, +2 buys, gain a gold, worth 1 victory point per gold you have. Huh. Okay. That's sure a lot more efficient than Phantom. Phantom! Is Phantom gone? I think Phantom's gone. Phantom's in Cornucopia, maybe? No, wait. Phantom's in Dark Ages. Never mind. Right. On trash abilities. Okay, moving on. So, yeah, so it is a village. It certainly doesn't seem like a card that you would want to rush towards, though. Like, I mean, +2 buys is nice, but I don't know. This is This is definitely more of a late game card. I mean, it does have the self synergy of you gain the gold and then you get a victory point with the gold that you gain because you have this card. But I don't know. It's not going to be helping your deck control to gain the gold, and you have to gain the gold every time you play this. So, I mean, it would be good. You know, never mind about the VP. It will be good with, you know, Apprentice and the like. As a non-terminal gold gainer, particularly with Broker, I guess, because Broker is terminal when you're using it to trash for draw or coins or favors, I suppose. And like most gold gainers, of course, are terminal. Like Pirate can be non-terminal, but that's kind of it without taking cost reduction or whatever into account. So that's nice. I don't think this is going to... So it is more efficient than Fatum, but you can also only gain one of them. So I don't think this is ever going to be like worth crazy... Well, I shouldn't say ever. I think this is rarely going to be worth crazy amounts of points. There's 30 gold in the pile, so in theory it could be worth 30 points, but, you know, realistically, how many golds are you going to be able to gain in the course of a game, especially like, you know, your opponent might contest them or something like that. It will certainly be a nice card to have like on a keyboard, or even Palace maybe, just because like it's feeding into the scoring strategy that you might already be adopting. Sad on a Bandit Fort board though, but yeah, in general, like, I mean, it won't, I guess on the flip side, it won't be too hard probably to make this card worth about as much as a province, because you are going to be gaining golds when you play it. And so you know you have at least one gold gainer already. I mean, actually getting 2-6 might be tough, but like getting to like 4 to 6 like seems pretty reasonable depending on when you pick this up and how much deck control you have. So like when I say crazy points, I mean it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to be like your primary means of scoring almost ever, but it could be worth a good chunk of points like pretty often, I think. Like I said, like competitive with province. And I mean, you have to get a province first to get it, but like it's certainly a better card in your deck than a province is. Like, well, aside from the fact that provinces are giving you rewards, but so yeah, I mean, I think again, this is not a card you want to rush for, but it is pretty good, I would say. It's pretty good. Next up, we have House Carl. +1 card per differently named action card you have in play. Okay. Well, that's certainly Cornucopia thematic. That could be a lot of draw, but it has the Swamp Shacks problem. It has the potential to scale faster than Swamp Shacks, but it's also limited by, you know, how many uniques you can actually get into play. And it's like particularly, you know, so like if you think about Horn of Plenty, it's like, oh, you can get a lot of uniques into play like relatively easily usually with Horn of Plenty. Like it's not that hard to get to the point where you know, you can gain your provinces or whatever. But a lot of times your deck control is relatively uniform in construction, right? So you play like your villages and your draw cards, and you have, I don't know, like 1 or 2 types of villages and 1 or 2 types of draw cards. So, you know, like 2 to 4 uniques. And then at the end of the turn, you play a bunch of, you know, terminal actions, which there might be some more diversity there. And then you also play some treasures, which adds to, you know, the diversity as well. And so from a Horn of Plenty standpoint, like, sure, you have like plenty of uniques. But for this card, that's going to be a little bit trickier. I mean, cantrips do help. So like if you have, you know, your peddlers or your market squares or whatever. Um, it's the thing is, like, if you're gonna draw a bunch of cards, the earlier you can do that, the better. But it's harder to get those uniques into play. Durations will help with this, right? If you have, you know, cards like Blockade or Hireling or Quartermaster, stuff like that. Even if it's not, I mean, Hireling obviously does, and Blockade does in its way, and Quartermaster does in its way. But even if they're not contributing to your deck control at all, even if it's friggin' merchant ship, like, it'll still help with this. Yeah. So, so it, like, if we put aside the duration type of stuff for a second, I think, you know, if you're trying to balance, like, I need to play this early enough to get value out of it, but I need to play it late enough to get value out of it. And it is terminal, so, like, I feel like you want to target maybe like 4-ish uniques. Like, if you're playing it as a smithy, as a, like, your reward as a smithy, that's pretty sad. I mean, sometimes that's going to be, you know, it's like the board has terminal space but has no draw, and so, like, you're like, okay, I'm going to play a whole bunch of, you know, villages that aren't stop cards, and then I'm going to play some terminals, and then I'm going to play this, I'm going to draw a bunch of cards. Like, okay, you know, and then this is a really, really valuable and important card, assuming you can find it, which, like, without the draw, maybe that's a problem too. But yeah, in the general case, like, I think aiming for it to be, like, better than Smithy, I think, is, like, a reasonable target, but it's going to depend a lot on the board. And, you know, like I said, if you have those durations, suddenly maybe you can either play it really early in the turn and still get it to be like Hunting Grounds or better, or, you know, you can wait a little bit and have, like, truly ridiculous draw. Yeah, so definitely, I mean, a pattern that I'm noticing with these rewards is that their evaluation is, like, less straightforward than the prizes that they're replacing, right? Like, Followers was a pretty straightforward card to evaluate in the majority of cases. Trusty Steed as well, and we still got Trusty Steed here. Princess, it's like, okay, yeah, you get your cost reduction, you get your buys, and, like, sometimes there's no plus buy and whatever. But, like, Housecarl, DeMent or whatever, and Coronet are all a little harder. I mean, Coronet isn't necessarily quite so much hard to evaluate as it is like, when is the right timing where you, like, are, like, most excited to put it in your deck. But yeah, these other two, I would say, are trickier cards to evaluate, which I think is good. Like, I think from a design of reward standpoint, that's good. I mean, you do run the risk that the rewards just aren't exciting, and then it's like you get Joust on the board, and it's like, oops, I don't care about the rewards, and then that, you know, is maybe unfortunate, but I don't know. They seem good enough that you're still going to want them. So, you know, if you end up building, like, relatively normally and you're not rushing to province, but then once you enter the greening phase, you're like, all right, well, I might as well pick up some rewards, you know, while I'm at it. Like, that could be okay too. I mean, that's a different model of play than tournament encouraged, but it could still be fun. So I guess we'll see. Meanwhile, we have huge turnip. It's massive. Okay, +2 coffers and +1 coin per coffers you have. Okay. So this is kind of like our diadem replacement. This, in most cases, seems significantly harder to make worth silly amounts of money compared to diadem, or even just, like, large amounts of money compared to diadem. But then, like, when you can do that, it's going to be especially silly, because it's like, it's going to be kind of like a win more thing. It's like, oh, I have a bunch of merchant guilds, and I've stacked up a bunch of coffers, and now I play this huge turnip, and like I get, 20, 40 coins, whatever. And actually, honestly, on a Merchant Guild board, sometimes like the base amount of money you have sans the coffers is not that much, because Merchant Guild doesn't give you that many direct coins, so that could actually be pretty relevant. But yeah, I mean, this is, I think the fact that it gives you coffers like as the baseline thing rather than coins is like, obviously it has some amount of self synergy. You can save some of the coffers, and you can like have it kind of compound over time, which does make it a more tempting reward to take early compared to Diadem, where Diadem without deck control is like, it's 2 to 3 coins, like whatever. This, like the just the flexibility of the coffers in conjunction with the fact that you can potentially, it's gonna be slow for it to build itself up, but like you don't have to save that many coffers for this to be giving you a significant injection of I just realized the order. Like, you get the coffers first. So this is always worth a minimum of 4 coins. Okay, I need to hold on. That's better than I was thinking. That is better than I was thinking. Always worth a minimum of 4 coins. That's a lot. It's not platinum, but it's a lot. And if you have 1 coffer, it's platinum, except it's more flexible than platinum. That's actually, it's still not going to ramp any faster than I was just saying, but the base case is already better, which again, like, makes it that much more tempting early. This is good. Like, I'm liking how these right now. Maybe I'll change my mind about this once I've played with them, 500 times or whatever. But right now, this is feeling more balanced than the prizes did, because like, you want the big. Do you want the like really this is like deck control card with the Lost City effect? It has the other effects, but whatever. We know that we're usually using it for Lost City anyway. Do you want like the big draw potential? Do you want to be able to have a bunch of money so you can buy maybe the deck control that's in the kingdom or whatever? Do you want the other, like the card that like mixes deck control and payload, but like requires that you have other good stuff in your deck, and it doesn't kind of just like work by itself? Although you could say that for House Carl too. But yeah, I think this is feeling this is definitely feeling like an improvement in that aspect. Other aspects too, like I think this will, like, we haven't seen a card like Followers that's going to tend to just like push all the games into like very similar game states. So yeah, but in any case, going back to just like huge turnip, so it's worth a lot of money, and there's smoothing to the money. So yeah, I think this is pretty good. And I definitely think, now that I understand, you get the coffers first, and then you get the money. It's got to be better than Diadem. Like, yeah, there were the silly Diadem cases, but this is, the base case on this is just like significantly stronger than Diadem. So, all right, and we've got a 6th prize here, Renown. +1 buy. This turn costs 2 less. Okay, hello, Princess. Princess had 2 buys, right? I'm not crazy about that. I wouldn't have thought that. Maybe Princess only had 1 buy. No, I think it only did have one buy. Okay, so we're leaving Princess alone. Yeah, Princess was never the problem, right? Bag of Gold was too weak. Diadem was on the weak side. Followers was too strong. Trusty Steed and Princess fine. So we leave Trusty Steed and Princess alone? Sure. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I still think I'm still surprised that it's, like, hey, you get the prize, sort of design, just because I think that was part of people's objections to tournament, even if I don't know that they necessarily talked about it that way. But like, if you both had followers, I don't know, that would be pretty, like, that would just be also unpleasant. but um but outside of followers, like, when that cost reduction is really impactful, and one person has princess, it's like a pretty huge difference. Or when, like, you have deck control but you have no terminal space and you really need the Trusty Steed. Although, there are 3 cards that give you terminal space here, rather than 1, right? You've got Coronet, Courser, and DeMent. So that definitely changes things. And you've also got up to 3 cards that are draw, right? Like, Coronet can be draw, Courser is draw, even if it's not a lot of draw, and House Carl is draw. You've got 2 cards that give you buys, plus a third if there's buys on the board. Granted, if there's buys on the board, it probably isn't so important to be getting those buys, but nonetheless, yeah. So in terms of, like, unique effects, there's no attacks, so there's nothing in here that's, like, truly uniquely available to one person based on one prize, except for the cost reduction. And I will admit that, like, that usually wasn't a problem with tournament, although with followers not being in the pool anymore, I could see that changing. Deck control will definitely be easier to get with Joust than with tournament, because there's no followers, which means that the renown effect will be relatively stronger than Princess was with tournament. So I could still see that being an issue, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll be fine. I guess we'll see. Overall, I think this is a significant improvement. I'm pretty impressed with the reward design overall. It is a little bit disappointing that 2 of them didn't change, not because I had any issues with those cards, but just because it would have been nice to have something new. And I'm a little bit surprised that we didn't get something new, just because that has been, like, the sort of, I don't know, that's just been the way that the 2Es have been approached. We haven't even really gotten cards where it's like, oh, if we just tweak this one thing, the closest maybe was, like, Collection replacing Goons, but it has enough differences, so yeah, I guess. But then again, like I said, prizes / rewards are like in a different spot than, like, Kingdom cards, so it does kind of make sense. I think it would have been nice to get new stuff, just because, and, like, in particular, the, like, I don't know, the gain 4 silvers is kind of like but yeah, overall, I think it's a big improvement, and I am impressed with the design. I think like, all 4 of the new rewards are or seem like, anyway, interesting cards. So I assume this is the bottom of this section of the document, and that there's no more cards to see. Yeah, this is getting into the, I can yeah, there. This is getting into the recommended sets. So it is time to look at what cards were removed and see what I overlooked. I know I already called out some of them. So we go on the strategy wiki. This is okay. So Doctor was removed. Masterpiece, That's certainly not surprising. I fully expected Masterpiece to be removed. That was like very weak card. Didn't do much. And then Taxman. Oh, that's also a card that I expected to be removed. So I actually looking at like I thought Doctor had a good chance. I mean, I should have said this up front so that I could have like gotten credit for I'm claiming, but I thought Doctor had a good chance, but I didn't want to see it be removed. However, now that I've seen the replacement, I'm like, yeah, that's great. But I would say my predictions for this were pretty on point. This like I was not taken by surprise here much. The cards that were removed, Doctor, Masterpiece, Taxman, it all makes sense. Cornucopia. Aha. Okay, horse traders. Fortune teller. Yeah, we knew about fortune teller, farming village, horse traders, tournament, and harvest. So fortune teller 100% expected. Tournament, I would say highly expected. Harvest 100% expected. Farming village I didn't expect. That's an interesting choice. I wonder if like the thought process here is just like, well, we have plenty of cards that are basically just village in the game, and so it's not that we need to replace farming village, it's so bad or anything like that. It's just like this is an opportunity to do something interesting and new and fun without like taking away a card that is worth keeping. Like we've got like essentially it's a free like spot to like put in that basically that below the line text that is like that is nice and new and fresh, and like we're not losing anything of significance with farming village. Horse traders, I was kind of on the fence about, but again, that's not a surprise. So again, yeah, this is weird to say, but I'm almost like surprised at how unsurprised I am. Like, because when I was looking over these cards, like as an aggregate, I was thinking, oh, I don't know, there's not enough stuff to cut. But then I think farming village really like is a big difference maker in that respect, because by cutting farming village, it meant that like that decreased the number of cards that like needed to go otherwise, and yet it's like I totally did not expect farming village to be cut, so that is the big surprise. But because it got replaced with a card that's like it's another village, it's like, well, okay, whatever. That, I mean, it's not whatever in the sense that the new card is definitely cooler and better, but it's whatever in the sense that like we're not losing anything particularly notable. Whereas if like we lose Jester, like, okay, Jester's not that good of a card, but it's still like a pretty unique effect. Like maybe it would get replaced with something similar, maybe it wouldn't, but you'd be like, oh, like going in, you're like, I don't want Jester to go away. But like farming village, it's like, well, you don't want to lose a village in the general sense, but you don't care about like farming village for farming village's sake. Well, maybe somebody does, I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, I think I did read a few comments about people saying they were underwhelmed with this. I am not. I think this is like overall. Let's go back up here. Okay, I know this is going to be hard to see. I do fit to width. Yeah, okay. Hopefully that's like big enough that you can see it and I can just like scroll through it quickly. So Carnival I think is weak and like not that exciting. I'll admit that one, but like Farmhands is cool. Farrier is cool. Maybe actually like a little bit, like too good. I could see that being the case, but it's cool. Ferryman is interesting. Footpad is absolutely insane. I just, wah! I don't know. Maybe I'm overstating the significance of drawing a card when you gain a card, but it seems totally insane to me. Infirmary seems great. Joust plus the reward seems like a huge improvement. Shop is good. I like the fact that it's good, but it's not a card, like you're not just gonna like stuff as many of them into your deck as possible. And yeah. And like, I already talked about the rewards. So yeah, I think this is overall like living up to the standards of 2Es, making dramatic improvements to the sets. I'm not really sad. I mean, that wrong one. I'm not really sad about any of the cards being removed. The only one that I particularly would have liked to see removed that wasn't removed is Young Witch. So, I mean, I'm not like broken up about it. I just like, I guess Horse Traders, it is nice to have the discard synergy, but then again, it's like the only blue card in the entire set, which is a little weird. So, got rid of that. That actually makes a lot of sense. It's not really obvious which of these cards was meant to replace Horse Traders, now that I think about it. I mean, maybe there is no direct replacement, but usually you can kind of tell. I guess Farrier probably, or maybe the combination of these two. Also, Footpad, I guess Footpad is just increasing the attack density, which is interesting. Fortune Teller is an attack, technically. Okay, fair enough. So, yeah, overall, I think, like I said, this is a big improvement. I don't really think the cards being removed will be missed much. Like, maybe Horse Traders, you like discard synergy, which, I mean, I do think that discard synergy is cool, but although actually we do have, now that I think about it, where is it? Ferryman? That has discard synergy. So, there's still some there, and I guess Footpad. So yeah, I mean, I'm not disappointed. I think this is cool. I'm looking forward to playing with these cards. I don't know when they'll become available on Dominion.games, but it's probably going to be pretty soon. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I guess I'll be back with more League matches soon. Maybe I'll do some videos with the new cards, like playing with the new cards, if I get the chance. We'll see, but yeah, until then. Okay, I am back, and it turns out that as I was recording my video on that was going through the rulebook, Donald X was posting what he was planning to post for the previews for all the cards. Oops. So I'm not gonna go into more depth on all of that in terms of my own thoughts so much here, but I did want to just go through what he said in the previews, because I think it can be interesting to get his thoughts on why different cards were being replaced and what's replacing what and all of that stuff. I like the design stuff. So without further ado, the first one is Harvest into Carnival. And Donald X says, Harvest is the first card you think of when you hear that there will be a Cornucopia in Guilds 2E. It's just not very good. Carnival shows that all it takes to fix it up is to have it draw cards instead of making money. Yeah, I mean, I think that we'll see if how true that is, but I mean, I certainly expect it to be a better card than Harvest was. Next up, we have Fortune Teller into Shop. Fortune Teller is both slow and weak. Relic is the fixed version. Yeah, that makes sense. Shop puts the idea from Conclave and Imp onto a card in the set that likes variety. Yeah, that makes sense. Next up, we have Horse Traders into Ferryman. Horse Traders has a lot of tiny text. That's really what's wrong with it. This kind of thing was done better later, and Guard Dog is basically the replacement for this. Okay. Yeah, I can kind of see that. I mean, the difference is that Guard Dog, like, you don't get to play the Guard Dog, but then again, you get the full value of playing the Guard Dog so long as you're not, like, I guess, like, subsequently attacked or something. I don't know. Or maybe is the order of the resolution such that if you get react with Guard Dog to Militia, do you discard first? I don't remember. Whatever. Ferryman is some other thing. It's a card that comes with a card, providing you a way to get variety into your deck. Okay, so that's like the thematic aspect of it. That makes sense. It also actually expands the kingdom the way that Young Witch does, which is something that I hadn't mentioned, but is perhaps worth noting. By the way, sorry for the size of these, but I figure since I've already gone through the cards that it's not important that I like zoom these in. All right, anyway, so next up we have Doctor into Infirmary. Doctor has more randomness than I'd like. It's also super wordy. Infirmary is a straight fixed version. It's less random and much simpler. Yes, I'm saying that about a card that has you play itself n times. Yeah. True. Yeah, I mean, I've said already, I think this is actually, like, honestly pretty masterful, this replacement. I really like it. All right, next up we have Masterpiece into Farrier. Masterpiece is a model of simplicity but rarely useful. Farrier doesn't try to imitate it. Instead, it's a new overpay card, giving you more cards for next turn. That's Wei Hua Huang in the art. This Farrier used to dive for pearls. Oh! Okay. Yeah, I do remember that being a discussion at some point about, like, oh, if you have somebody in the art, like, that this matters for some reason. So, yeah, it makes sense. But interesting that these are paired up the way that they are, but presumably, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be this linear, right? Like, you could say that, like, I don't know, Horse Traders plus Masterpiece becomes Ferryman plus Farrier or something. I don't know. Whatever. Maybe that's not actually the case. I'm just, you know, by way of illustration. If some of these, I mean, to me, they don't seem like it's the connection isn't necessarily, like, super clear. All right, so now we're on to Taxman into Footpad. Taxman is another wordy one and not great. Footpad spices up a basic militia attack with a way to draw cards in games with it. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so then we're on to Farming Village into Farmhands. Farming Village is inoffensive. How am I replacing it? The thing is, it doesn't actually do anything. It plays very much like a plain village that costs 4, and that's great, so Farming Village seems fine, but man, I could have a card that actually does something. Yeah, that's a more efficient way of saying what I was trying to say earlier about Farming Village. Farmhands, then, is a village that also helps you deal with this turn. I sure could have used a village, right? I didn't Yeah, I didn't think to frame it that way, but that is a good way of framing it. All right. Now we've got tournament into joust. So at last, it's come to this. There's an XKCD comic about that. It's like where you just like can like throw that line in like anywhere to make it seem more dramatic. Tournament is crazy complex, giving you a 2x2 grid of payoffs to grok. And while some people love it, many hate it. I could try to make a version that was less hated and more loved and also simpler. And that card is Joust. There's no payoff grid, no blocking. It's less snowbally, though of course still snowbally. And it's more of a commitment to have one in your deck. And there's no followers. In fact, the prizes are all different, though a couple are basically just renamed. Furthermore, there are 6 different ones, and you use 2 of each for games with 3+ players. Oh, really? I didn't even catch that. Huh, okay. Well, that is interesting. So, moving on, we go to Princess into Renown. You can't really see it that well here, but the art is a significant upgrade here as well, in my opinion. Anyway, this one just has the errata Princess was already getting to not be a while-in play ability. Yeah, I mean, it says already getting, but I mean, it already had this online, I think. Surely it did. Like it changed in the errata from last year. Obviously, I mean, in the print version, it wouldn't have yet, but. Then we go Trusty Steed into Courser. This just drops the Chancellor part for simplicity, and then in parentheses Chancellor. Yeah, honestly, totally forgot that was a thing. And also, like, the wording has been streamlined as well. Choose 2 different options instead of choose 2. The choices must be different. So honestly, I hadn't even noticed that, but this is the kind of thing, you know, that Donald X pays a lot of attention to his credit, to try to like improve stuff like that given the opportunity. So yeah, I guess while functionally it's not that exciting of a change, or it's not an exciting change, but it is definitely an improvement now that I recognize that those differences are there, and the fact that I didn't is sort of speaks to that fact. Then we get Bag of Gold into DeMent, or however you would say that. Bag of Gold gets upgraded by also being a village with +2 buys and being worth VP there. Now, is it worth taking? Also, it doesn't put the gold into your deck, which I mean, I think, you know, was definitely part of the problem with Bag of Gold. Also, I kind of didn't acknowledge the fact that this is a replacement for Bag of Gold, because Bag of Gold is pretty forgettable. You know, I was like, oh, gold gainer. I didn't say anything about the fact that Bag of Gold is also a gold gainer, non-terminal with that. Note that there are now there are 3 rewards that are villages and 2 that give +buy rather than 1 of each from the prizes. That I did pick up on. Haha. Okay. Then we've got Diadem into Huge Turnip. Huge Turnip! I'm sorry, I just think that's like a really funny name for a card. Anyway, a new treasure rewarding you for piling up coffers. Yes, Cornucopia and Guilds is now really just 1 expansion. Yeah, I don't think I mentioned anything about that, but I was kind of thinking like, oh, like interesting to put like a coffers thing here. And yeah. And then we have followers into House Carl. The replacement has no real connection. House Carl plays into Cornucopia's variety theme. I mean, it's draw. It's terminal draw. Followers was terminal draw. I would say that there's a connection there. There's more of a connection there than there is in any of the other, you know, like things that you could claim for it to be replacing anyway. And finally, we have nothing into Coronet. In the 6th reward, since there was space, a Super Throne. And there you have it. So yeah, I just wanted to tack that on to go through Donald X's thoughts. And I will just reiterate that I think this is really cool. I'm impressed. And looking forward to playing with the cards. So for real this time, thanks for watching, and Until next time.